Okay, so these two screws right here we need to undo because that is attaching this side to the case. Okay, so we want to do at this point is take off the side. And now we just need to undo this screw right here. And also there's a couple screws in the back. Okay, and that is the marquee. So here's the marquee, the original marquee. So this is just wood. So we're going to replace this. But there is one piece that we need, very important. You don't throw this away, and that is this piece right here. So this little side piece, we need that for our install. So there's just 3 screws right here. Okay, so very important. Definitely do not throw away this piece because we're going to need it. And I'll show you how to install that in the cabinet. So here's our original marquee piece. This is the one that we're going to use. So you want to install this with the black side facing down, white side facing up. And then if you notice that this side here has a little bit of an angled edge to it. So that side is going to go against the monitor, basically. And so there's basically 2 holes in the back. They're already started. So as long as we line those up, it should go right in. All right, now let's put the cabinet side back on. And we're actually not going to put on this piece right now because it's actually, because we don't have the marquee, this is going to be loose enough to where we'll have room to put this in later. So let's not do that. And now the tricky part. Now it's not going to be as sturdy because we don't have the marquee holding it in place here, but we will fix that with our new marquee. Just a second. Before though, let's go ahead and screw in the 4 screws on this side. These are all the parts for the Arcade 1-Up Pixelcade Marquee upgrade kit. So in this video, we're going to go through actually how to install it and assemble everything. So for this, you're going to need Phillips screwdriver, a torque wrench screwdriver, and if you got some pliers like this, that will also be helpful. So let's go ahead and put some of the stuff aside that we don't need right now. This is the Pixel controller board, so let's go ahead and take that out. All right, so the first thing we're going to do is we're going to take this guy here. This is a mount for that same board, and we're going to mount some hardware on it. So let's go ahead and get our nylon, a bag of nylon screws and nuts. Let's go ahead and take all of them out, actually. Okay, and so what we want to do is with the board facing up like this, on the outside holes, not the inside, so on the 4 on the outside, we want to take this and just stick it through the bottom, and then take one of these nylon nuts and just attach it. And you can do this by hand. It doesn't need to be that tight. So hand tight is fine for this one. All right, so we got that done. So next thing, we're gonna put these zip ties on this mount. But before we do that, we need to take off the acrylic masking paper. So let's go ahead and do that right now. Okay, and so very important, we have to do the other side as well. We definitely need to take out both sides. So next step, we have 2 zip ties. This just helps with the cable management. So you'll see here labeled, it says D and then zip tie. So we're just going to string it through like so. Okay, that's a zip tie. And the next step, we have these little pieces labeled B. So we want to go ahead and get those out. 2 on each side. And there's some mounting hardware in here as well. And these blocks are, if you're familiar with the way the 1-up mounts with your Marquee, there's a little screw that screws in the side of the Marquee. And so we need something on this for that to screw into this. So that's what these blocks are for. So let's go ahead and take out the hardware. Okay, so these basically just line up. Getting a little hard to see, but there's a B etched in the acrylic. So just line up the B's. There's 2 for each side. So like so. And then we've got these longer screws here. And those are going to go in, actually other way around, through the back. So I think it's easier if we just start with one first. So let's put both through. Okay, that's one. Let's just do one at a time, actually. So we're just going to take our hex nuts here, and then these are the metal, and attach them. And for these, it's actually important that they be pretty tight. So we'll use our pliers here in a second to tighten them up. Okay, just to keep it tighter, I'm just going to use this plier here to get a little bit more leverage. And right now these are torque screws. I may, in a future version of the kit, just change them to Phillips heads just to make it easier. So if you're watching this video and I didn't update it and it's really a Phillips, that's what happened. Okay, so we got one side. Let's do the other one. Okay, that's pretty tight. We don't want to get too tight because it actually might break the acrylic. But that's not going anywhere, so this looks good. Okay, so again, let's make sure we turn it up so we don't accidentally put it upside down. Okay, so we got the B-blocks mounted. Now we're going to put on the mounting screws for the Pixel board on the inside. So there's basically, a little hard to see, but that says Pixel board and then A and then USB, which means that our board is here and the USB connector is there. So we want it pointing that way. So again, Pixel board, USB. But right now, we're going to take these and do the same thing on these 4 holes right here. Okay, and again, hand tight is fine for that. So at this point, we don't actually want to mount the board yet because we're going to mount the LED panels first. And if we mount the board first, there's a few screws that we won't be able to get to. So that's why we're mounting the LED panel first. So the way this works is you just line up the holes and you'll hear it click in because there's a little notch, just like that. So let's do one side at a time. And for this, I'm going to take my bag that has 12 M3 mounting screws. So let's go ahead and get those out there. And these don't have to be tight. And you don't even need to put in all 6 screws if you don't want to. I just do, but it's plenty just to put in half. Okay, so now let's do the other side. And then on these LED panels, I forgot to mention, see the arrow pointing up? Make sure it's pointing up and not like this. And if you forget that, it's okay because the holes actually won't light up if you do it wrong. So that's not a problem. And then also on these LED panels, these are very fragile. So the LEDs are just right here. There's no protection over them. So if you bump this into something, you could break off a couple LEDs, which wouldn't be good. So just be real careful with those. When you're screwing these in, normally it's not a problem, but you can just kind of look in the back and just make sure there's no big gap here. You're not going to see even if there is, but just to be perfect. Okay, let's do the rest. Okay, so I think that's all the holes. Looks good. Now, if you have an extra screw, I always like to put an extra screw. Just these are easy to lose, so if there's an extra one, that's why. Okay. So now what we're going to take is our ribbon cables. So there's 2 ribbon cables in the kit. And the first cable is going to connect this one to this one. And then these cables are notched. So it's impossible to connect them the wrong way, which is really nice. So see, there's a notch right there on the top, and there's a notch right there. So we're just going to plug that in. And then same one with this one. Then we're going to do our power cable. So this is a custom power cable actually we make. And we've got two connectors here. Those are both going to go here and here. And those also can only go in one way. Okay, so now let's go ahead and attach the mounting board for this guy. So let's pop it on right here. Show you that. So it just slides right on into the holes, the inside holes, this one. And we're going to need to secure those, the same hex nuts. Okay, so we got our board mount in. Now let's actually attach the board. So here is our PCB board. And so very important, if you look at the picture, it says USB and it's got the USB connector right there. So just match it up. So this is the USB connector. So we want it pointing that way. So let's go ahead and place it on the outside holes this time. Okay. And same thing, we'll secure it with those nuts. These ones are a little tricky. You just don't have that much room. So what I like to do is get it started and then just kind of turn it from the side. That works pretty good. Okay, so this last one's actually the hardest one. So I like to unplug this just to give you a little bit more room. And we'll do the same thing. Oops, get it started. There it goes. So once you get started, you just kind of turn it on the side. And as you can see, it's not even tightened down, but it's not going anywhere. And then let's take this, put that back. This is very important. Don't forget this, by the way, because if you don't, the board won't actually turn on. All right. So we've got our board mounted, nice and sturdy. And we're gonna take this ribbon cable and attach it to the board. So let's see here. It's actually easier if we go into the panel first and then into the board. And again, just like the other ones, these are notched, so you can't screw up. Okay, and you can just kind of tuck that in there, so it's a little neat. Okay, so at this point, we pretty much have, well, we do have everything wired up. The last thing we can do is on this power cable. So the female connection is going to go to our power brick, and then this guy is actually going to go into our DC jack, is going to go into the actual board. So just plug that in. And now let's use our zip ties and kind of make this a little bit neater. I usually go like so. All right, that's pretty good. Okay, great. So everything is wired up. And the last step is to put in the hex stands, because on the front, we're going to have another piece of acrylic. This has the masking tape on there right now, so you don't see it, but this is going to be see-through, and that's just going to sit here. So we need some hex stands to let that attach. So that's the last bag of hardware right here. And these are basically the only holes you have left. So right next to these blocks right here. And these you actually want pretty tight. You don't want these coming loose, so let's tighten up pretty good. So very important last step before we test this is there's two modes for this. One mode is you can have it on Bluetooth. You can use this Bluetooth dongle. And then you'll see there's a toggle switch here that says BT, which means Bluetooth, or USB. So if we go Bluetooth, this will, we can control this from an Android phone. Sorry, we don't have iOS support right now, but from an Android phone, you can change the images on the Marquee. But if you are modding your Arcade 1-Up with a Raspberry Pi or a PC, then what you're going to want to do is you're definitely going to want to have this change dynamically based on the game that's running. And for that, we need to be in USB mode. So that just depends. If you're going to run just out of the box Marquee and not use RetroPie or something like Hyperspan or a PC, then let's put this on BT. So for now, we'll just put this on BT. And let's go ahead and plug in our dongle. Okay. And now let's do a test. Let's make sure this guy's working. So we're going to take this, we're going to use a 5-volt, 10-amp power supply. Like that. Okay, so here's our power. So DC jack going into this guy. And let's keep our fingers crossed and it should turn on and we should start getting some images. So this is going to cycle through and just play a different Marquee every 2 seconds. So you could just leave it like that and just kind of have it as a decoration piece. That's certainly one use case. But again, it's a lot more exciting and interactive if you have this connected on USB and controlling it dynamically based on which game you're going. So that is it. Again, here is the front. You know, we take the masking tape off, and this is going to be the clear piece that's going to go over it. But we don't want to do that right now because we have to first install this into the Arcade 1-Up. Then we'll mount this. So let's go ahead and walk over to our machine. Okay, so now let's go ahead and install this piece. And there's enough give here to where we can just finagle it in. So that's what I'm going to do. Make sure we got it the right way. This way. Okay, that is in there. And then now the fun part, we're going to put it in our Marquee. Again, make sure you got it the right way up. So if you look at it, there's a little thing that says up. So make sure that's up. And then this power cable we can just tuck back there. And so it is going, so we have 2 spacers also. These are going to sit here that just give us more of a vertical mount. And it's just going to go like that, like so. Okay, so basically have 3 screws here that we need to attach. And it's going to be easier to get things started if we put the screws in first. And notice that these screws need to be a little bit thicker than the ones that came with. So these are actually different screws that I had. They're just a little bit thicker. And I'm going to go just get this started. Last one. Okay, so we basically got them started. And now I'm just going to go right in here. This should already line up. Okay, so see how there's a small gap right here? So we're just going to apply a little pressure to close the gap, and then we're going to drill a pilot hole before we put in our screw on the side here. Okay, so let's do the same thing on the other side. And same thing, we want to apply that pressure and close that gap. Okay, so now we're just going to take some wood screws, and I'll include these in the kit, but basically these screws work good. They have a, see the thread count isn't super tight because it's a tight fit. If the thread count is too tight, you're gonna strip, so you don't want to do that. And when I screw it in, I want to do the same thing. I want to hold that like so. The other side. Okay, let's tighten this just a little bit more. Okay. So now you can see our gap is gone. So as you can see, this is nice and tight, very sturdy, not going to go anywhere. Okay, so last step, we're going to apply our Marquee cover. So let's take off the masking. And this looks black now, but you'll see when I take it off the other side, it's translucent. So it lets, I think this one lets like 37% light through. So it's not totally see-through, but the lights can go through. And when it's on, you can still kind of barely see the LEDs, but not too bad. So speaking of LEDs, why don't we turn those on? Okay, also very, very important. So these LEDs run off 5 volts. And the power supply that comes with this guy is actually 12 volts. And I think the connector is actually the same. Yeah, it's the same connector. So you definitely do not want to use this power supply that came with the Arcade 1-Up to power the LED, or you're going to fry the board 100%. So just be really careful about that. Okay, so the other nice thing this does is you can see it gives it a nice diffused effect. So see there, very bright. Looks a lot better with this. Is diffused a little bit with this guy. So let's go ahead and I like to use these thumb screws. So these thumb screws right here look pretty nice. You can use normal Phillips, but these guys look kind of a nice industrial look to them, I think. And those just line right up. And these you can just screw in by hand.